Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse, and today we're talking about some of the different ducks and waterfowl you can find here in the winter months. There's definitely a good diversity, so I thought I would show you some of the different types of ducks you can find around here. Of course, it's not every single duck that you will find, but it's a good start and it's a good mix of things you're likely to see if you go out towards any large body of water this time of the year. And I'll show you some good places as well locally to go and find some of these birds. If you do have a bird guide, if you're kind of interested in learning more about waterfowl and you want to be able to identify them a little bit better, if you have the Birds of New York book, that's a good start. It doesn't have every single bird in here that you'll see in the state, and there are guides like this for just about every state. So if you're in Pennsylvania or Ohio or in the Carolinas, you can get a bird book just like this for your state as well. You don't have to just do the Birds of New York book. There's lots of ducks in here, but you might want to consider getting a bigger, more involved book, something like the Peterson Guide or a Sibley Guide. What I do like about the insides of the Peterson Guides are that they have these plates where you can compare the birds a little bit easier. So for example, for ducks and waterfowl, which we're talking about today, it shows them in flight. And sometimes it's easier to identify some of these ducks in flight because they have different color patches on their wings from one another. So that can be helpful. Or I really like this little folding guide too. This is super concise. It's a very inexpensive little folding guide. It's only $8. And same kind of thing like the inside of that Peterson guide. It has it's a folding chart that you can unfurl, and you can really easily compare different things all together all at once. You don't have to flip through the book to kind of try to find out what it is you're looking at. It's all together in one spot. So this is a really good one too. And so this is the Waterfowl of North America. So it's got a whole bunch of things in here. So this has really any kind of duck you're going to see in the area in it, which is really, really nice. So I find these really helpful. Something that you can look at the whole spread of animals all at once, especially with ducks because they tend to hang out together. They tend to form big rafts, and you might find lots of different species all together in one spot. So having a nice chart like that can really be helpful, I find. As always, we'd love to know who's on. You can say hi in the comments. You can ask any kind of questions, and we'd love to know what kind of things you are seeing. If you've had your first birds of 2025, now that we are in 2025 already, what was your first bird of 2025? You can throw those in the comments. Mine was a black-capped chickadee, followed very shortly by a lot of house sparrows. So curious what your first bird that you saw in 2025 was. But we'll talk about some ducks today and some of the different ducks you can find in the Western New York area. First of all, ducks have different behaviors too. There's what are called dabbling ducks and diving ducks. And dabbling ducks, you've probably seen before. Dabbling ducks are going to be ducks like mallards. Canada geese are considered dabblers. These are the ducks and geese that when they're feeding, they tip upside down. And so their butts stick right up in the air, just like this picture on the left here. So when they're feeding, they're kind of like a buoy that's just bouncing around. Whereas the diving ducks will actually dive underwater when they're feeding and swim around. And so with diving ducks, you might be watching one just kind of on the surface, bobbing around. You've got it in your binoculars or in your scope. And then all of a sudden it dives under the water and will pop up maybe a minute later somewhere else. So they can be a little bit more challenging to look for when you're birding. Well, we'll talk about some of the different geese and ducks and mergansers and things around here this time of the year. Snow goose, we've talked a little bit about snow goose. There have been some seen around the area, so look for them in flight, just like a Canada goose would be. And then also you can find them by big open fields. Same with Canada goose too, actually. But the snow goose are especially known for their migration locally through the Montezuma area. And this is a video of that. And this usually happens in February, like early to mid-February or so, where there's hundreds of thousands of snow geese will come to that area. And usually it's around the Montezuma area. Sometimes it's in different fields and farm fields. But here is a video just kind of giving you an idea for just the mass of birds that come through this migration of snow geese. So snow geese are mostly white. They've got the black tips on their wings, and they've got an orange bill. So they do look quite a bit different than your typical Canada goose that we have here. But this is just some footage of some of the snow goose migration locally. Pretty cool. So that's always something awesome to go see if you have the time. There are, of course, Canada goose. You've probably seen them many, many, many times. Basically, if you can find any kind of water, whether it be a pond or a marsh or a lake, you'll find yourself lots of Canada goose. Some of them do migrate and go down south for the winter. Some of them will stay all year round. Then there's a couple different swans that you can find around here right now. We have an introduced species of swan called the mute swan, and this is the one you're probably most likely to see. If you spend any time around Irondequoit Bay, there's quite a few around there. They are mostly all white. They have black feet, and then they have that orange bill. So that's how you can tell you've got yourself a mute swan, because they have that nice bright orange bill. So this is an introduced species that has started to kind of be to be around here year round. They've been becoming increasingly more and more common, the mute swan. And then right now you can also find what's called the tundra swan. And tundra swan, you'll see they don't have that orange bill. They have a mostly black bill, and they'll have some yellow on their bill in between the tip of their bill and their eye. Sometimes it's a big spot, like in the picture here on the left. Sometimes it's a lot smaller, but they will have a little yellow coloration on their bill, which, depending on how far away they are, can be a little challenging to see. But we do have tundra swan here in the winter months as well. So be on the lookout for them. As far as some of the dabbling ducks go, these are all dabbling ducks that I'm starting off with. So that is one way you can help identify them too, is by their behavior. This is called a northern shoveler. And northern shovelers, the males and females for that matter, their coloration is a little bit similar to the mallard, where the males have that bright green head. But then they also have this really, really wide bill. Both the male and female do. So they have this really, really wide bill, which identifies them as the northern shoveler. Both male and female do have that bill. So this is a duck that you can find around here now. This is one that's a little less colorful. This is called a gadwall. And the gadwall is, you can see, it's very grayish in color, a little bit of brownish on the head. When in flight, you can see it has these chestnut color patches on the wings. But both the male and female also have a very light colored belly, which can be hard to see when they're floating in the water or when they're flying, depending on what angle you're seeing them at. But if you're able to get the right angle, like the picture on the far right, you can see they do have that bright white belly, which is a really good distinguishing characteristic of the gadwall. Another type of bird, of waterfowl duck you can find around here this time of the year is going to be the American widgeon. And the males have a really nice, beautiful green stripe that goes through their eye back to around the back of their head. Females have more of a chestnut, kind of iridescent chestnut color that instead of the green. But you can find them around here this time of the year. That's called the American widgeon. Probably the most common duck you'll see, of course, the mallard duck, male and female. The males have that bright green head. The females do not, but they both have that very colorful bluish patch on their wing, which is outlined in black, and then the black is outlined in white. And so that is your mallard duck. There is a duck that's kind of similar in coloration and in size, at least to the female mallard duck, called the American black duck. And it can be a little bit difficult to identify the American black duck compared to the female mallard duck sometimes. But if you look at the black duck, it is darker in color. So the feathers are an overall darker color than the female mallard. And if you look at the wing, it has that blue patch, that bluish kind of purplish patch on the wing that's outlined in black, but there's no white. So you can see it really well when they're in flight. But even at rest, like the picture on the left, the black duck has that blue patch on the wing outlined in black with no white, as opposed to the mallard, which you can see has that bluish patch outlined in black, and then there's the white. So you can usually see that pretty well. So that's a good way to identify the black duck. So we've got those here as well. The northern pintail is a really beautiful duck. The males have that really long, elegant tail. They have a brownish colored head. Their bill can be a grayish bluish color. There's not too many other ducks that look like this because that tail is pretty characteristic. So that is your pintail duck, another type of dabbling duck. This is called a green-winged teal. This is going to be a duck that's smaller in size from a mallard. A lot of these ducks are about the same size from one another. So the mallard is a standard size for a duck. It's a good comparison size. Green-winged teal are going to be smaller than the mallard ducks. So they are smaller than your typical ducks. And the males have this brownish kind of chestnut colored head and that green stripe that goes through their eye like the American widgeon has. But then they also have this nice bright green patch on their wing. So both male and female will have that bright green patch. It's much more obvious in flight, but even at rest, you can usually see a little bit of green. So here's a male sitting on some snow. You can see there is that green patch there. And even this female in the bottom left, who is floating in the water, you can still see that little green patch. So their size being a smaller duck than a mallard, and that green patch on the wing is what will identify them as a green-winged teal. And now there are diving ducks. So here is a typical diving duck and its behavior. So this is a long-tailed duck. And you can see this is what they do when they dive underwater. They're swimming around and foraging for different plant material or macroinvertebrates, little insects that might be in the water. So your diving ducks will dive under the water, swim around, forage, and then pop back up. So here are some diving ducks that you can find around here right now. This is called a redhead, and you can see why it gets its name. The duck has a very brightly colored red head. It does have a grayish bluish bill that's tipped in black. So that's a redhead, and you can find them here all year round. They look a little bit like the canvasback that we also have, which is another type of duck, but the redhead has a very gray and black body, where the canvasback does not. The canvasback has a white body like a blank canvas. So right now you can definitely see some redheads around here, and during migration time you can find them pretty easily. We also have what's called a ring-necked duck, which the name always kind of threw me because they have a little ring around their bill as well. So I always want to call them the ring-billed duck, but they are the ring-necked duck. They're very black, have a very black back, grayish body, dark colored head, and a bright yellow eye. And they have a very striped bill. So their bill is tipped in black, but it also has some white and gray on it. So that is a ring-necked duck, which looks similar to these two different species called the greater and lesser scaup. So you can see the scaup doesn't have as much striping on its bill compared to the ring-necked duck. It's a good way to identify one from the other. Now the scaups can be hard to differentiate though one from the other because they look super similar. Their colors are very similar. The biggest identifying characteristic that will let you identify one from the other is going to be the shape of the head. So the greater scaup has a very rounded head, and the lesser scaup has a thin head. So the bird on the left-hand side, the middle picture, is actually the lesser scaup with that thin head, And then the bird on the right has more of a rounded, more robust head. That is the greater scaup. So it can be hard to identify one from the other unless you're seeing them together, but both of them you can find around here right now. And if you're going out by the lake or by the bay, we also have what are called scaups here. And these are the two, or sorry, these aren't scaups, these are scoters. And these are the two most common that you will find here right now. So we also have another species called the surf scoter that you can sometimes find around here in the wintertime. But these two are your most common species. So this is the black scoter and the white-winged scoter. The black scoter is that duck that is on the top, very dark in color. The white-winged scoter is on the bottom. It has those white patches on the wing. It has a little bit of white around the eye. And the white-winged scoter, you can really see those white wings when it's in flight. It has very, very bright white wing patches, which the black scoter does not have. They have these really kind of bulbous bills as well, which a lot of the other duck species don't have. The first species I showed you, that northern shoveler that had the really wide bill, that's wide at the tip of the bill, but these have a very bulbous bill that is right next to their face. So these are called scoters, and you can definitely find them around here this time of the year. Same as long-tailed duck. This is a species we have in the winter times. Really, really gorgeous. The males have this beautiful plumage and this beautiful long tail feathers. And this is another type of diving duck. You can find them in rafts, sometimes of the thousands, easily in the area. So really pretty duck, worth it going out in the winter months to look for some open water for the long-tailed duck. And here's a couple other types you can find here. We've got what's called a bufflehead. Bufflehead are another small size duck, smaller than your mallard. The males have that bright, big white patch on the back of their head. Females have a smaller white patch on their face, which is here on the left. That's the female. And you can find them around here as well. You can even, you can see them sometimes even in streams too. I've seen them in moving water more so than I've seen some of these other ducks. We also have what's called golden eye. Like their name suggests, they have a bright yellow eye. The male golden eye has that bright white patch on its face as well. A green head, very, very white, bright white body on the male as well. So these are common golden eye. There's different types of golden eye species. Common golden eye, like its name suggests, would be the most common one that you'll find. And we do have what are called mergansers. This is another type of duck. Really, really thin bill. This is a small one called a hooded merganser. And when their feathers are flared on the back of their head, they're super easy to identify. The male is on the left on both of these pictures. And then the female is in the middle there on the right-hand side of the photo. And she's very gray in coloration, but she still has that nice big those big flared out feathers on her head. So these are called hooded merganser, another type of diving duck that you can find around here. Common mergansers are definitely around too right now. Like their name suggests, they are quite common, easy to find. The males have that green head. So the male is on the top right there, green head, very reddish bill, really, again, another thin bill, just like the hooded merganser. The female is on the left, so she looks quite a bit different than the male. She's got more of a chestnut colored head, still has that thin bill, and they have a dark colored eye. If you're able to get a glimpse of them close enough, you can see that they have a black eye, as opposed to the red-breasted merganser, which has a bright red eye. So they do look quite a bit different. At least the males look quite a bit different from one another. The females, for me, can be hard to differentiate sometimes one from the other. They look kind of similar to one another. But the male red-breasted merganser, the plumage on the head is quite a bit different than the common merganser. So you can see here the red-breasted merganser kind of has that crazy plumage on its head. It looks like it's got bedhead, whereas the common merganser has more sleek feathers on the top of the head. But both of the females have more kind kind of wild plumage on their heads. So they can be a little bit difficult for me to identify one from the other. But the red-breasted merganser will have that bright red eye, whereas the common merganser has that dark eye. So another way to identify one from the other. We also have little grebes. This is our smallest grebe, called the pied-billed grebe. Sometimes you can find these here in the winter months. Very small, little diving duck, and it has a little stripe that goes through its bill. So it has a very, very short bill, really small rounded head, and a little stripe that goes through its bill. Like other grebes, it will carry its babies on its back in the spring, which is really fun to see. And we do have a couple different loon species. So here are two that you're most likely to see. Of course, there's others that sometimes pop in, but the two loons you're most likely to see in the winter are going to be the common loon, which you've probably seen many photos and paintings of before, and then also the red-throated loon. Doesn't look like its name suggests right now, but in its breeding plumage, it does have a bright red throat. But in the winter, this is what it looks like. It's more drab. It's more gray in color, gray and white with a red eye. So this is a red-throated loon. And not a duck, but a cormorant you can often find mixed in with some of these ducks. This is called a double-crested cormorant. Common, especially if you're places where people tend to go fishing. If you are by a pier looking for some of these ducks, double-crested cormorant you can usually find as well. They will dive under the water. They have a hooked bill, so if you look closely at its bill, it does have a little hook on it, just kind of like a bird of prey would. And they're also known to stand out on any kind of structure or tree with their wings spread out, and that's a typical posture of the double-crested cormorant. So if you are also going out to look for some of these waterfowl species, of course, always be on the lookout for other birds like the bald eagle. Don't be surprised if you see bald eagle around any kind of open water this time of the year. Same with gulls. There's lots of different gull species. So birds of prey are definitely out and about, even in the winter months, which brings me to a couple photos that were just sent in recently from Mark J., who went to look for some owls. There have been some very good sightings of snowy owl out in Seneca Falls by the Finger Lakes Airport. People have been seeing them very consistently. So if you're looking for some snowy owls, look up Finger Lakes Airport, and there's been up to 3 seen there all at once. So it seems like it's pretty good odds of seeing one. If you're looking for a snowy owl, that would be the place right now. There's also been some sightings out by Braddock Bay, but down by Seneca Falls has been the one where you can really kind of count on seeing some snowy owls. Mark also sent in this photo of a short-eared owl, which was probably out hunting over a field around dusk would be my guess. That's your best bet of seeing them. And this one was out in Geneva. He was able to see the short-eared owls. So if you are looking for ducks and waterfowl, and if you're in the Western New York area, the Rochester area is where we are, so I can give you a couple recommendations here. First, a little bit south, speaking of the Seneca Falls area, if you're going down to look for snowy owl, definitely stop by some of the different ponds around Montezuma. That is a fabulous place to look for waterfowl. The wildlife drive, where you can just drive through the refuge, is closed until, I believe, April 1st. I believe it opens back up, but there's so many different overlooks and so many different places you can pull in to still see different ducks and waterfowl all along around that area. Also, anywhere along the bay, anywhere along Lake Ontario is great. Ontario Beach Park is a fantastic place to look for ducks and waterfowl. Braddock Bay, out by where some other snowy owls were seen, out by Burger Park, anywhere along Braddock Bay, again, another fantastic place to look for ducks and waterfowl. There's lots of water in there, lots of pockets of water for all of your bird watching needs. And then along the bay is also great. There's different places you can pull in to park so you don't have to be on the side of the road somewhere looking for some of these ducks. LaSalle's Landing is a great example of that. Right off of Empire Boulevard, you can pull in, walk over to the water, and see what kind of birds you can find. Great place to look for ducks, swans, eagles, geese, all that kind of stuff. And there's different places along the lake, along Irondequoit Bay, around Lake Road that you can pull off to look for waterfowl, including the bilgrays out by Seabreeze. There's a boat launch out there, and that is a good place to pull in and look again for ducks and waterfowl and gulls especially too. So you never know what kind of things you'll see out there any time of the year, but right now is a really good time to look for some different waterfowl species and gulls and birds of prey. Let's see if you've got questions or comments. Looks like we've got some comments here. Susie Q is on and says hello, and she says, I always remembered the loons in Canada when I would go with my parents every year in their haunting call. Yes, people really do love the loon and their beautiful call. We carry these little plush birds called Audubon birds, where you squeeze them and they do the call of the bird. And the loon is one of our best sellers because everybody does love that call. And she also says the American duck, the American black duck is beautiful. Yes, it is a beautiful, beautiful duck that you can find around here this time of the year. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions for the day. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on Tuesday with another live stream. And until then, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.